This is How Solo Scale episode 1. Like, it's episode 13 in reality, but this is kind of like the first episode of the shift.
It is. It feels good. It feels like we're starting something new.
Good. I feel
so refreshed, rejuvenated. Like, my creative juices are on fire. And that's what happens when you hit that intersection of what you've been trying so hard to figure out, and then you get there. I'm not saying this is going to be it forever, but this feels very good right now.
Well, it's the next layer, or the next mile marker on the road to building a legendary business.
All right. So what's on your mind?
Well, I think we set the premise of this show is that every week we're going to share a new framework, a concept, or example of how solopreneurs go from 25K to 50 plus per month. And so I think it's important to, as always, begin in the beginning. When we're coming up with the premise for this show, I thought the concept of how solo scale resonated deeply. And it's also because it is an oxymoron. Is that the proper use of the term?
I don't know.
Oxymoron?
Let me hear why you think it's an oxymoron, and then I'll tell you.
No one goes alone.
Yeah. That's correct.
We're all solopreneurs in some way, but we are not alone.
It's not that the phrase how solo scale is an oxymoron. Solopreneurs in general are a bit of an oxymoron. However, I think a layer deeper, when you get to a certain point where you just cannot do it alone anymore, or it doesn't make sense to do it alone, and you start to scale, it becomes even more oxymoronic, if that's a word. Because it gets harder to, as you get bigger and your business is growing and you get better, it becomes much harder to scale truly solo. You need at least a couple people in your corner. In some way.
Whether you have a coach, you're not alone. Whether you have a contractor, you're not alone.
A VA, you're not alone.
I find the great irony, a VA, an editor, a ghostwriter, anyone, you're not alone. And it's you and I are talk about solopreneurship all the time. And by definition, we are no longer solopreneurs, which is, I think it is a micropreneur, someone who owns an extraordinarily small business with fewer than five employees. The point is that no one does it alone. All of the people that we see who are objectively successful and living a good life. I'm not saying I'm doing the Justin Welches, the millions of dollars. I think Justin has people. I don't know him personally. I've never met him.
He's publicly said he has a person
dude.
or two, I think.
Yeah, people have people. Everyone's got a person in some way to help them manage some stuff. I do believe that the first $1 billion single person business is on the horizon. Chris Falaka talks a lot about this. $100 billion, $1 billion worth of a percent, right? 1 billion percent. Is it possible? Yes. But is it practical? No. And so I think the idea here is just let's just kind of call it what it is, which is no one goes alone. And just before we hit record, you and I were talking about how much more fun it is to no longer be alone.
So much more fun.
Throughout this entire process.
We just have hours at a time where we're just having side-by-side work. Body doubling
body
all
doubling
day.
makes... If you could find a body double
People
buddy.
do that. That is a whole thing.
Oh, yeah. There's a whole industry. It's a whole niche. You could find body double buddies websites. You could subscribe to that as a service and find it is the most helpful thing that I think as a part of having a co-founder and someone else in your life that is working towards the exact same goal.
That's why it feels so good to be on a team, because you all have shared goals are so natural. Anyway, that's a whole mindset, human evolution thing that we could absolutely rabbit hole on as well.
Yeah. And all of that aside, the concept today is you don't need to go it alone. You just don't. Find a coach, find a friend. One of the early things I did was I've talked about this in previous pieces of content, find your tribe. Finding Camp Solo and linking up with John Benini was the single most impactful thing that has ever happened to me as a solopreneur. Just meeting people and finding a tribe, even if we're working towards similar goals as separate businesses, but we all have a shared, a common goal, which is keep playing. don't fall out. Don't drop out of the game. Keep playing as a solopreneur. And there's nothing wrong with going and getting a job.
I have never said this publicly. I seriously considered it a few months ago when I was just really, really tired and burned out. And the way that I knew that it wasn't time and that it might never be time is like my gut was like, absolutely not. Like, that is the worst thing I can imagine. It just stopped me right away. But my brain went there because I was like, man, like this is figuring this stuff out as you scale is really demanding and difficult. I do envy the people that are just like, fuck it, I'm gonna just be in the work and like do my shit and then not have to worry about growing a thing on my own. Like, I do envy that sometimes, but there's just this whole other part of me that's like, no, like I like the challenge of this and I want to do things for me, by me.
I heard Brendan Hufford say this a few months ago and it rattles around my head all the time. Like, when is enough enough? You can only go up and to the right for so long. When is enough enough? And all of us have different points of enough. I mean, your LinkedIn feed and your Twitter feed or whatever feed you consume is like, you need to make $1 million fucking dollars. You need to make $1 million. You got to make $1 million. If you don't make $1 million, like, what the fuck is the matter with you? Make $1 million. I mean, that's a great goal, but at some point, when is enough enough?
I don't care about the revenue number. I care about what is actually in my pocket. And I think there's a couple, like, there's two camps as well on that. There's the people who really care about the revenue number and they're trying to grow something. Maybe they start as a solo. It's like, maybe it's a Dave Gerhardt journey. Start as a solo. And then it's like, no, I'm going to build exit 5. And now he's building something that's an asset that he could sell. Like, that is a pathway. I'm not there yet. Again, that could change. Like, all these like statements of I will never, I don't believe in that. Like, at the moment, and I've said this before too. I go through seasons, and I think we all do. I have seasons of how I like to work, and we have seasons in our business. And right now I'm in a solopreneur season, or I guess my co-preneur season. If eventually we want to take this bigger, that'll be something that maybe we come to that pathway later. That's not where I'm at right now. But what I care about is, like, usually the higher that up and to the right you go on revenue, the more you have to outsource, the more you have to get people to help you scale, and the less that you get to keep in your pocket. And I want money in my pocket, dude. Like, I like money in my pocket.
Yeah, money is better than no money, especially when you have small, tiny humans that demand the majority of it. We work mostly with marketers, and we know mostly marketing solopreneurs. And most of them don't want to become a quote unquote agency because agencies are notorious for having shit margins, being hard businesses to run for a lot of reasons. The more bureaucracy that's involved and the more people are involved, the bigger the ship, the harder it is to turn and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's so many reasons why that is. People are very disenchanted with that idea. And I don't disagree with it. Having been on the inside of a very, I wouldn't say a massive agency, but a very big agency, and especially a big agency in one of the biggest in the HubSpot ecosystem. Like, it's hard. It's hard to manage all that shit. So I get why people don't want to build a business like that. But with the invention of automation and your ability to delegate and basically manage your own operations, you can increase your operational load from the equivalent of 20K a month to 40K a month pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, you did that with Brian.
I mean, we've done this a few times now. I mean, Brian's success is one of my most, I can't take credit for it, but like, it's one of the most impressive things I've ever witnessed.
Give a bit of context.
Brian runs a company called D.I.G.S Marketing. And when we first met, Brian was doing $25,000 per month. Had a really, really great business. He had some extra capacity. He wanted to codify his offer and make his sales easier and start getting some inbound rolling. We did all of that, and it ended up with between the offer work and the sales work, and then we introduced some automations and worked on delegating certain stuff, and we increased, over doubled his operational load to the point where he's currently managing with 3.5 contractors.
3.5 contractors, yeah, and a good ops system.
And none of them are full time. They're all like very, very part time, and in rock solid operations and automations. They're
entrepreneurs themselves, right? That's who I want to hire if and when we hire, like, entrepreneurs.
The army of entrepreneurs is like, it makes the most sense. More than doubled his operational load to the point where he's currently managing 73,000, and we think his ceiling without any more contractors or without tapping into more of his time is probably close to 90 or so thousand per month, which is bananas. It's absolutely bananas. And he's not charging 50K a month. He's charging like 65 to 75, 8,500 a month. So he's got a spread of about 13 or so clients now. Anyway, so here's when you witness this stuff and you go, oh, this is what's really possible. Now, Brian is an extraordinarily ambitious person. And he's like, I want to grow this thing to as big as I possibly can. There's a lot of people I know that when we hit a certain operational capacity, my work there is done. I had a client that just graduated because we got to 20K a month. And I was like, cool, what does 30K look like? And she was like, I'm so happy. I have so much peace in my life for the first time in months. And I just want to be here. And I was like, great. I'm so happy that you've achieved that goal. It's not like I don't get to decide how big your business grows, but like, I think that there's always going to be more work to do, but it's just, she decided, hey, I'm at so much peace right now. I want to run this play. I want to learn a lot at this value. And then maybe there'll be a point when I want to do something else.
That's what I needed to do. I will say the cautionary tale of having 2 to 3 whale clients that are getting you to the 20K a month and just chilling on it without marketing, like the engine of market conditioning and getting pipeline, at least kind of you're having conversations with people still about it. Like it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah. So this is how I talk about client impact values, right? Just to kind of keep pulling these stories forward. Brian is very well diversified. One client leaves, it's a 5 to 8K hit, depending on, but it's a very small percentage of his total portfolio. So the woman just graduated, that 20K is made up of 2 clients. And it's not if one will leave, it's when. And so being able to manage that and understand kind of, well, how do we reduce client impact values? And that's kind of the point of saying, of the necessity of growing beyond that 20, 25K into the 50K is not so much greed as much as it is stability.
100%. Like I adore the mindset of this is enough for me. I don't need to grow like crazy. But I just, like, I have to put the cautionary tale out there because if you get comfortable, it'll feel like a job where the money is guaranteed and it is not. And that's the hustle of being a solo, especially if you want to do this and you want to keep good months and then you want to maybe scale beyond it one day. Like, pause, take your time, but don't forget that it could all just go with a couple clients, and that is a very risky business.
The risk aside, the anxiety, I don't operate well with that hanging over me. That's just my personal, I think my risk tolerance for certain things is much higher and lower for other things. Like for that, it's too low because again, it's not if the clients churn, it's when. Whether it's a natural graduation that comes to its natural conclusion, the project ends, whatever the thing is, you could part on good terms and still be exposed. And that's the thing that I'm always thinking about and always cognizant of. There's a mental hurdle that people struggle to overcome, and this is the packaging versus productization idea. When we say like codify or clarify your offer, and they think, how am I supposed to productize this thing? Let's define some terms, because I think this will be helpful, right? When we say productization, it's like turn custom into highly repeatable. And is that a goal? Is that something that will happen the more you run a packaged offer? For sure. But when we talk about packaging, it's easy to understand. It's simple, structured, and communicated in a basic way. So packaging is more around like positioning and messaging. Productization is systems, right? Turning professional services into a literal product, repeatable, fixed scope, things along those lines. There's an overlap for sure. But the fear that people have is like, I do highly technical or complex work. It's not productized. Now, I'm sure every time we go through this, we find elements of it that are highly productized. You do a lot of the same things. You go through a lot of the same motions with people over and over and over again, or within every single client engagement. But that comes secondary to packaging because you can't productize what you haven't sold in that, right? You have to sell it to service it to figure out how to productize it.
So how do you package it up? Because a lot of the people that we're working with now, or like our new ICP, is making like 17K minimum, and they're killing it, I guess, on like the revenue line, but they don't usually have either of these things in a good place.
The packaging that was one of the things that really made, like, for example, for Brian, that was one of the big things, right? So Brian does demand generation services, and we looked at his portfolio and we said, what is the common denominator across all these different things? It's email, it's ads, and it's what he calls HubSpot plumbing, right? The HubSpot revenue operations element of it. So it's not the most novel thing in the entire world, right? It's pretty straightforward demand generation stuff. But when he packages it up in a way that people are just like, this makes a lot of logical sense, it's easy for me to understand, and it's easy to buy, like, not much more work needs to be done. And so it's trying to find, especially like in the operations space, there's a lot of operations consultants that make a great living, but they're doing very different things across the board because their skill set operations spans a lot of different things. So it's like, how do you approach it? What's the common denominator across the client base? This is one of the first things we do with people, is like this client audit and survey.
There's such a mindset thing that comes up here too, just real quick. Like, people get really nervous about what they consider as like taking away something valuable that they could do. And we had this conversation with a client the other day, and it's like, the way that I like to think about it is, when you're packaging and productizing things, you're not taking away things that you can do. You are productizing step like this, the first step, get me into your world. And then I'm going to do this specific thing for you. And then if that went well and you want more ongoing whatever, we can talk about that, and there's other things I can do. But it's like, at least doing the same thing first seems like a good like mindset hack to think about this work. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I think this is a necessary part of the process. But to just continue to drive a wedge between these two concepts, like, packaging is what's included, who's it for, what's the outcome, how does it all come together, versus productization is, what are the individual steps I take people through every single time, over and over and over and over again.
I'm looking at the clock. Nick and I had like a short window to record this, and we started a bit late. And now I got to help get my kids down for a nap for various reasons that don't matter. But this is life. I got to bounce. Nick is the expert in this stuff. He's done this a million times for people. I'm going to leave you in good hands with Nick, and maybe I'll just get you guys all back by talking more next time.
Hasta la pasta. Okay, so here's what we're working with. Offer packaging. What's included? Who's it for? What's the outcome? This is a game of perception. You're not changing what you do or changing how we talk about it. What's the wrapping for this idea? How do we communicate it in a structured way? So this is more about calling a list of ingredients a cake instead of like flour, sugar, water, eggs, or whatever. Versus productization is going through the individual steps every single time, the exact same steps every single time. And what I find is that when people think productization leads to a cookie cutter or templated outcome or output, and I don't think this is true. I've run through a highly productized version of my offer creation process dozens of times, and everyone ends up with a different offer. I know Erica has run through her content creation process as a writer and as an editor and as a coach dozens of times with dozens of people, and the outcome and the output are always different. So productization is more about your ease of operations, and it reduces the time to value created the more you do it. So when we think about the first time I ran this play, it took me months to help someone end up with a live public facing offer, versus now it takes a few weeks. Productization, right? Time. When the volume goes up, when the number of times you've run the play increases, the faster and more effective you become. More effective for your clients, it's more effective for your life and your margins and your ability to deliver, and for the outcomes that you're looking to sell into your clients. So we'll go into more details of like, when do you package? If you don't have a packaged up offer, package it immediately. I would package probably before you even start trying to figure out how to productize, because like I said earlier, you can't productize and deliver a service you haven't sold. So how do we make something easier to sell? We package it up. codify the thinking. Make it super, super simple. I just saw a post, Anthony Pieri from Fletch. He put a really great spin on this. So I'm just going to read what he said because I feel like it just captures this so well. Operationalizing the delivery model. So the more efficient you get, the better client results get. The more efficient you get, the time you spend shrinks, but your pricing goes up. The more times you solve the problem, you're seen as a true leader in the space. The more times you solve the problem, the more patterns emerge that fuel your content, which in then turn drives more clients. And then the more you create the content and market the problem, drastically reduces your sales cycle lengths. They even say that some prospects buy without ever having a call. So a totally touchless service experience. Now that's like the far end, the far extreme. They're in the hundreds, 400 plus times versus the majority of us are probably sub 100, but in the dozens of times. So that is a combination of highly packaged and highly productized. Even if your model isn't highly productized today, the more clearly it is packaged, the more times you run it, it will naturally become more productized because it is a frustrating experience for you, let alone your clients. It's a frustrating experience for everyone when you're trying to manage everything at varying stages and doing something slightly different every single time. So package first, then productize. We'll go into the details of each in future episodes, but today that is where we're going to end. So until next time, my friends, we'll talk to you soon.